And so we have the story of the prodigal son. So we go into now this relationship with providence, which is both the future and the beginning at the same time, the alpha and the omega. It's the point from which you left and incarnated, and it's also the becoming in the future of what you will be or could be. Everyone, don't forget to join the Greenwood Fellowship on my website. It's incredibly rewarding and beneficial to have a walled garden of other serious people on this path of initiation, to share experience and wisdom together as we all progress. You'll have access to membership videos, the second half of all lectures and streams, monthly think tanks with senior members, senior group streams on our YouTube, and soon in-person events, conferences and meetups. Please join the fellowship. A son wants to leave, and the father divides his wealth and gives it to the son that wants to leave. Think about this like the Faustian wanderer, that he's not aware of this father, though. Gives it to him, and he takes it, and he squanders it on whores, and the realm that he goes to experiences a famine. And that famine forces him to become completely destitute, and he goes and works for a pig farmer, and he's hungry and completely in destitution and completely in need, to the point where he actually desires the slop of the pig. Not even just these first desires that he had, but the slop of the pig is what he's by this place that he's gone. It's given form to who he is, and he desires the slop that feeds the pigs, and he can't even have that. And so he's in this destitute state of yearning. And in that state, he realized that even the servants of the Father had a blessed life, that I recognize that I've sinned, that it's not within my forces to do. Well, he doesn't say this, I'm paraphrasing. It's not within, it's an acceptance of not being within your forces to do anything about it. And decides to go back to the Father and to acknowledge his sins and say that he'll be a servant. He's not worthy of being his son. And so he goes to the Father, and the Father sees him on the way home and immediately feels compassion. And then they embrace, and the son acknowledges his sins and says he's not worthy. And the Father calls to his servants to bring his finest robes, his finest shoes, everything, finest everything, and slays the finest cow for a great celebration. For the son was lost and now is found. He was dead and now he lives. And as the celebration is going on, the brother, who's always been loyal and done what he's told, is told by one of the servants what's going on, and the servant tells him that the brother's home. And then the father comes out, and he says to the father, he doesn't go in, and so he says to the father, well, I've been loyal all this time, and yet you've not given me the finest calf and me this or that. You've given him the finest cow. And the father says, my son, basically everything that I have is yours. All my wealth is yours. Your brother was dead, but now is alive. He was lost, but now is found. And this is a great moment of celebration. But there's so much, of course, in this story. Incredible. Of course it is. It's from the Bible. And what in this, and we'll do our best what we can here with what we're talking about. Go to the next slide. Before we go into the particular meanings, let's just talk about what really this is about. Reality. This story is about temporality, is about incarnation, is about, of course, Christ is the Father in the story, the keystone. the ground of your being, the ground of your psyche, which initiation brings you towards, the ground of creation. The Logos is the ground of creation and the ground of you. You are his son. And it shows you that the story of man, and this again connects with everything that Nick Land talks about. The story of man isn't Darwinianism, isn't the grinding of the past into the future. Is the story, and not even theosophy either. It's the story of man and the fall, which creates the primordial guilt, which is what the Lord's Prayer is part of praying. And Jesus is always praying on our behalf because of that primordial guilt. Again, this is deep esoteric stuff. We won't go into that deep level of it, but it's about this fall. It's about the knowledge of good and evil. It's about the story. This story is our story. It's both personal, but even cosmic. It's about our fall into the world. This son falls into the world because he follows the serpent. The serpent and the wealth that was freely given, but the serpent, of course, is all the distractions and the same thing that the wanderer faces. The serpent is that world. But this prodigal son definitely reflects where we are at the moment, where it's like the Faust story, is that all this magic of the worldliness seduces him. But again, that happens cosmically, is that he's seduced. And what replaces these divine faculties, divine wisdom, revelatory action, intuition, the miraculous, what replaces these things are the serpent's low intellect and the provokings of low pleasure and knowledge. And so you can see how that parallels there. That's what our story is, the story of the prodigal son. We sinned primordially with Adam and Eve. It's a story about our coming down into all the earthly evolution to about where we are now, at the ground, at the absolute top of that point of how far Araman can go, how far this earthly thing can go. And then it's the road back. It's the road back to the Father. How far, we're at the point of how far the development can go on the horizontal in space. And now it's about the development of the spirit in time, and moving towards back to the source of what incarnates us, where we come from, where we actually come from. And so man's story is the story of the prodigal son. It's not just a personal story. It's actually to do with creation, because leaving the Father is leaving the Garden of Eden. Every time someone incarnates, they also leave the Garden of Eden. But everyone left the Garden of Eden, and that was primordial sin. And our story is coming home. That's what our story is. All the development, it's not progressivism. It's coming home to the future. It's coming home to the ideal of the plan. And look how far we've traveled away from the Father. How far Western man is almost at the very far extremity of how far he can get. That's why nihilism's a good thing. Nihilism, Nietzsche, they're all good things. They've got their place. They get rid of the corrupted version of what we're discussing today, so people can find the truth. That's actually a reality, a cosmic reality, the cosmic Christ that you can really interact with. It's not a story that talks about an invisible man, that you only experience after you die. No, no. It's the truth is far greater. And yeah, so where are we here? And so that's the key. That is what this story is. But more particularly, let's get an idea of if it's about intelligence and losing these faculties and regaining them, let's look at the story particulars. If the son was lost, what doesn't he have? He's lost in temporal, spatial. He's lost. He doesn't. If you're lost, what don't you know? You don't know the way, and therefore you also don't know the truth. You don't have the way and the truth, do you? So when you're found, what are you? And it's not just a literalism, because look, if he's alive, but is dead, if you're dead but you're physically alive, what have you lost? You've lost something that's not just physical, some sort of faculty, right? You've lost spiritual life and vitality, and also the factical particulars. You've lost the wealth and all that. But what is this thing that you've lost from God? It's distance from God. The prodigal son story. That is why you're in such vagrancy, because you don't have the future, because he knows what's best for you and you can interact with him. And it's this low calculative intellect and low practical desires that you've been following. You've been led around by the dick. You want a cheeseburger. These are mimetic desires. You need the religion to go back and find and go back to the ground so you can discover the plan for you that is more glorious than anything that could be possibly offered in the future. And by the low snake, and by the low things that it offers to you, about the polemical will to power that we see on Twitter and all this stuff, lusting after wealth. The point that you get the wealth, again, and you see here, it doesn't satisfy you. You can get 200,000, you get your base desires, doesn't matter. You're a billionaire. Look, again, Elon Musk's on ketamine, it doesn't matter. It just extends you. And this is the greatest thing that you can engage with. And it's the serpent and those temporal, or what has been, right? Because people think that Christians, you just want to check out of life. No, you're not getting it. We want the true life that the Lord promised us, that the Lord offers you, because it's this karma and this destiny. That's what is the worldly. There is a king. You can move towards a kingdom of heaven on earth. Your kingdom come. Your will be done. Here, saving. But that can be a raw presence, a thing for you in the world that you can engage with. That's part of initiation, which I've got videos on that you can watch. And what we're doing and we're all working towards as a membership community, which you can join the membership. But again, it's always going to be, the knowledge is always going to be free. That's why these streams are free. And you can do it on your own. But, it's good to have a fellowship of other people together and a place that's safe from bullshit and polemic bullshit. But let's continue with this. So then you think about what this is. I mean, there is a deep meaning in here. It's about the fake future. Like we've talked about, what's the fake future? The projections. The fake future, fake freedom, which he experienced fake freedom, the son. We experience this fake freedom. But what is it really? It's distance from God, where you think you're self-independent as the Uberman. But what happens when you become cut off from the future, cut off from the Father? And I'll explain what true freedom is. We'll go into what true freedom is. But what happens? Well, of course, you think you're free and you're now this self-referential being, but what fills the void? What makes you decide what you go after? Of course, it's mimetic. It's temporality. And you become a slave of that, and you think it's freedom. It just possesses you. And that's what Araman, Satan, wants. He wants you to just be his extension. Just an organ, like an orc, is an extension of Sauron. That's what the destiny is. Without the future, you don't have a future. You're just you have no free decisions. You're just a provoking of the past, like the wanderer. He can't escape it, thinking he's free. But you get clues of a way to return to the Father, to return to the Father. And you see this also in, again, so it's fake justice or old justice. It's the quantitative way of thinking versus the qualitative. And that there's a new justice that comes after that, which we'll get into. But let's see it in some of the story details that are there. So you see this in when he's talking to the brother. The brother makes a quantitative argument about, well, you've given him this cow and this and that. And his response is what's so key here. And that's where you see this isn't about the rewards. It's about, we're not, the resources we're talking about. Yes, there's the miraculous, and the Lord does provide his daily bread that is filled with his and not Ahriman and Satan's influences, which the technical and framing forces every little thing we interact with, including this stream, this computer with, that I'm using right now. But he says in his response that everything I have is yours. He's making the qualitative response. He's saying, this is about the life forces and the distance from God. You can see here, it's the qualitative. It's to your experience. It's access to the future, which of course the Lord will guide you to what you need and give you the resources that you need. But it's really about this contact with the future and trust in the future and what can be a real factical part of your being, a real thing that presences to you through initiation, through the religion, through Christ, and relying on the low intellect and the quantitative trading, this and that, low cunning. Which one do you want? The Father offers it to the good and evil alike, is that you can come back, but you have to clean out your house. You have to admit all your sins. You have to forgive everyone so you would be forgiven. That this is the new covenant, the new justice. There's just so much in this story. Again, I'm not going to extinguish it by talking about it here today. You should read it for yourself and really explore it, because when you look into these things, they reach out to the eternal, and things get sent to you from the truth about this, what esotericists, Christian esotericists call the arcana, or the fifth gospel, which is outside. It's in the eternal. You think about it that way. So same with the tarot. If you're interacting with the tarot, this is all of what medieval wisdom had to knew of the eternal. And initiation, when you interact with those sacred symbols, it reaches outside of where you are, not just into the world, it's into temporality and beyond space, through space, if that makes sense. So these things we're talking about, and what that you've lost, what do we lose since the fall? What do we lose? We lose divine wisdom. We lose revelatory action. We lose the future. We lose this life source through our sin. Sin causes diseases. When you sin, people go, "Oh, it's just what a book says." No, it's a sin because you're wounding yourself, because it hurts you later. And this is why you see Satanists, real ones, they try to wound people's karma. Like they would get women to abort babies. One would. There's one that an exorcist talks about this, because they're using that to wound karma so badly they can use it for will to power, and they can enslave them and possess them and turn them into this extension, this provoked being. And the worse they make it, the more provoked you become, until you can become completely possessed by a demon. And this happens to Nietzsche as well, unfortunately. Again, we love Nietzsche. He was searching for this freedom as well. But he looked into layers of the temporal. He didn't get to outside. But yeah, we love Nietzsche. So, but yeah, that's the fake freedom. Homo provoked. And so that's what this resource really is. And it's freely given and always there. But let's also use this to better understand freedom and what this new covenant means, what this new way of thinking, this appeal that he can be appealed to directly, which is what the Lord's Prayer is. It's part of the new covenant. But I think you're getting a sense of what I'm talking about here. And so let's look at freedom now. Again, this is in regards to this story as well. Everything the Son did was contrary to the Father's will. but he allows it. But still offers the forces of life to him freely. And so, it wounds him to see his son go off and damage himself with all the sin. But you can also see the way back in terms of acknowledging the sins. But of course, it's only one story. The rest of the Bible shows that. The rest of the New Testament shows what we are to do. But you can see that freedom, what does that mean? So he lets him do what he wants to do here. Is that true freedom, though? No. But he allows it. And what does that mean? It means that there's so many deep ramifications from this allowance of the prodigal son. And it shows you that the Lord is not responsible for the evil that happens in the world, only in the sense that he allows creation to exist itself. And because freedom couldn't exist without the allowance of his withdrawal from the creation. His withdrawal from the creation. If that's not the case, then he's responsible for all the evil. He's responsible for the parasite in the eye that eats out the kid's organs, all that stuff. These creatures, every little thing that happens. Because this is about our distance from him. Temporality is created to a degree anyway, by, at least how it is for us, by our distance from him, by our rebellion, by our leaving that he allows. If that wasn't the case, then we wouldn't be free and we'd just be his extension, right? If he was responsible for all the evil, we'd just be his extension. You wouldn't be free. You'd be deterministic like Araman. And you see that in Orthodoxy and Catholicism. And no offense to Protestants or everything, if there are any watching, but this is where effort and grace come in, is that he is only all-powerful insofar as we acknowledge him and pray to him. Because if he's intervening, he's just intervening. He's breaking the freedom that he gave, this withdrawal. But if you pray to him and ask him for it, he'll give it to you, Especially if you remove this sin, which has damaged your karma, as we talked about earlier. You can see the future and become the future and be engaged with the future and not be distant from the future if you go through this initiation process. If you do the Lord's Prayer, right? You're fixing your karma. Again, in collaboration, though. It's not you doing it yourself. If you think you're doing it yourself and you're trying to do it like a Übermensch, it just won't work. Because you're then doing it like he's a mechanism. So you need to constantly have it in mind that, no, not a mechanism. It's about love. It's about a relationship. And it won't work unless that's there. And work is the wrong word to use it. The language is really dangerous. Our language is really dangerous. And that's why Heidegger is so important to constantly understand. And also the early Greek fathers because a lot of what the Orthodox did was try to fix and keep away from that rigid Aristotelianism that comes in, that rigid Platonism that comes in, that cuts up Christ's clothes, like the mercenaries, cuts up being very careful about the terms they use. But what were we saying? Oh, yeah, freedom. And so that's what sacred magic is. You've got a way in front of you. But true freedom is finding the way back home. Because, like we said, he only intervenes if we pray for it. He only intervenes if we're moving towards his will. He works through us. And so that means everything you do is incredibly important. Your effort is important. Effort versus grace. This is your destiny, to become like him, to become the divine by doing or moving towards doing sacred magic, which is what this symbol stands for here. The scepter is sacred magic. The bottom one is a cup, which stands for the concentrated point. Again, this is about the three oaths, which is, I'm not going to go into the deep detail today, but this is about the three oaths of obedience, chastity, and poverty. And so the point at the bottom of the cup is the concentrated point, poverty. The pillar of the cup is the riveting of the will, which is obedience to solar law and revelation, as is handed down in the Bible. And the cup is chastity. It's chastising your imagination. And so that is a purified human will. And when you unite that with YHVH, it becomes YHSVH, which is sacred magic, divine and human will, and free collaboration, though. And this is why it's so important what true freedom is because he doesn't force our hand, but you come back to him. He doesn't he doesn't possess you like Araman. When you do initiation, when you go back towards him, you're always still a being. Some saints decide to have it replaced and every part of their being replaced with divine being, but it's still a person. And this is the difference between Christianity and everything else, because the person is divine, the divine is a person. And going the way of the yogis and the Buddhists depersonalizes it, destroys this. So even when a saint replaces himself, he's still a person. He still has the gift of tears. He still cares. He still feels great sorrow and great joy in the deepest, most definitive and tapestry of different types of feeling. And so, but that's about the Christian union as well, is that you don't give up who you are. You work in free collaboration. You do give up who you are in the sense that you get rid of all your sin, but your image and likeness of God isn't just removed, isn't just destroyed, which is what happens in yogic ecstasy. And so true freedom is knowing the future. True freedom is working with the future in free collaboration. And you can see with my story about how I was dealing with the future is that you can reject it. You can reject it. It's always your choice. But if you work with the future, who is the Lord, who knows everything and knows what has the most faith in you that anyone will ever have, is your true father and mother, who is more your father and mother than and who you're going back to when you die, more your father and mother than your mortal father and mother, knows what's best for you. Going with him and following him in freedom and in faith, you might be frustrated. You might go, just tell me, or like exactly what to do, or just possess me and speak. Just possess me and speak what's supposed to be said, right? No, because it has to be collaborative. Yes, there can be this flow of inspiration, and he'll help you, but it's always your choice. And he's always got your freedom and your moral development in mind, so won't interfere. So people go, why doesn't he talk to us? Why doesn't he say anything to us? Because you have to ask. You have to ask. You have to ask. Or else he's then interfering. Then he's encroaching on your freedom when you incarnated and want a distance. You have to come to him yourself. That's why he's not throwing shit around and throwing lightning bolts. He, like, in terms of these direct interventions without anyone, they're very rare. But he'll speak to you at key moments, unless you initiate, of course, because it's about effort. It's about also suffering. The more you suffer, of course, the more that is a kind of prayer. Work is a kind of prayer. If it's working towards him, work and effort in prayer, those different things all lead to more benediction. So those things are like a blood flow. There's a blood system between us, and he is in the blood as a raw fact of being. The more you progress in it, initiation, that's one of the mysteries. I don't know how much I should go into that, but he's in the blood. And so this benediction is like a vascular system. It's suffering, work, and prayer, and grace delivered. And so the more that goes on, and the more you do of that, the miraculous occurs. But the point is also to get out of it's also to get out of, where do I talk about this? I don't know if I talk about this next or not. Maybe I talk about this next. which is the getting out of the system. I'll come back to it. What's next? Well, I will just talk about it for a second now. It's like it's very important to escape the context. Actually, no, I won't talk about that. Let's move on. So now let's understand this justification, which is, again, related to karma. And this is where we come down to a sort of introduction of the Lord's Prayer, what it means, what it deeply means, what it does. Again, saying does kind of leads it to be technical, and it's not. If you take it as technical, you won't have a relationship and it won't happen because it's never technical. It's always collaboration. And yeah. So justice, the new covenant. This arcana is to do with this. And so what is this future that we've been talking about, this keystone? It is moving from this eye for an eye of the horizontal, of what the sun talks about with the calculative, me getting what's mine. The old way is about my debts to you being repaid, eye for an eye. Since Christ, there is a way to affect karma. The new karma is horizontal. You can pray and benedictions given and interventions given. Forgiveness is given. Miraculous is given. Grace is given. What's grace? It's all these different faculties I've talked about. It's miraculous intervention. It's the future being revealed to you. That's grace. It's all these different things. It's revelatory action, how to move your body. It's Christ interacting with your body and breath and helping you walk up a hill, all those different things. Always in free collaboration. That's why initiation always talks about this passive active. It has to be the passive active synthesis because you need to be a free being. If you're just completely passive, you're just taken over and possessed by something. That's what Satan would prefer. That's what happens, is that you just become a complete provoked being. That's your future if you don't discover this way. And so, can you change your karma, this destiny? Can you change it? That's the question at the end of, and you can. This new balance is what is this balance between the future and the now, and the healing of karma. Again, these are so deep issues that will be always never be extinguished by me. But it's to do with the mystery of Golgotha. Christ already has redeemed our primordial sin and is constantly praying on our behalf to the Father. But you're always constantly being judged by the Father, who is the future. And you're going to go back to that future, which is the outside when you die. You can affect that future judgment now by praying to him, which also will heal your being at deeper levels of your being by making your petition to him justified. And what does that mean? It means you have to forgive other people first. It means you have to pray on other people's behalf. And so it won't be just paying back the exact debt. It's the new covenant. It's not going to be eye for an eye. It's not going to be just fixing, okay, I was mean to someone. How do I fix that? I'll go up to that person, and you can do that. But the new covenant is you'll be released of it if you pray for them or bless them, or bless the people that have wronged you is, again, key. Also, it's about, again, it's praying for others on the Lord's Prayer is always our Father in heaven, not my Father. And that's so important because it's for everyone. It's praying for everyone, which is about this primordial guilt as well, cosmically. That prayer is heard by the Father and goes in unison with Christ. Again, these are really deep esoteric things. I'm not going to go into too much of the detail, but that's the new justice. And that's why you can see in the symbol, the sword is on the pillar of severity. That's Kabbalistic. I won't go too deep into that, but the pillar of severity and pillar of mercy. Severity is basically you. It's the will in temporality, and mercy is the universal. And so it's aimed upwards. That's the will. The sword is always the will. Also purification. So you got to purify the severity, which is the evil that you've done, and be aimed upward towards the other scale, this new vertical scale. And that's to do with the spirit. And so you pray the Lord's Prayer. That's how you do it. You go and you take the 3 oaths and you do all the practices that are related to the 3 oaths that I've talked about in other initiation videos. And you can see them again on the front page of my YouTube. Initiations start here. And it goes into the details of this. And also mysticism video I taught, or in the video on Tolkien, there's one of the last streams. I talk about the 3 oaths and what you do. And I've also got some small videos coming out about that. So that's what this means. That's the new covenant. And so it's not just from the quantitative mode to the qualitative mode that we're moving into. Forgive them their trespasses and your Father will forgive yours. That's the new covenant. And Jesus is clear about this when he talks about it, before he actually talks about the Lord's Prayer. Be not ye therefore like unto them, for your Father knoweth what things ye need before you ask him. So he's suggesting to you that he knows what you're in personal need of. You can ask for those things, but you must deal with forgiveness. You must deal with your sin. Yes, this is offered to everyone now, qualitatively, to everyone, even evil people, but they have to clean their house out. If you clean your house out, you move towards him. You become him. You become Christ. If you clean your house out, though, it doesn't work otherwise. You don't have these faculties become available unless you do that. And so this is Faustian man. It's coming home, but it's down into the depths of the psyche to where the spirit is. Ecstasy and ecstasy. That is the only thing that can give you access to this. Concentration without effort. It's meditation, but don't think that you can just do this like a technique, like a Buddhist, and just do the meditations every day. That's part of it. You have to do the whole thing. You have to do the forgiveness. But also that will heal your psyche. You've got things in your past that keep coming up. These are clues. I talk about this in my forgiveness video that gives you an idea of what you should do and how to do it in one way. But the Lord's Prayer is another way. You should be praying that every day. Again, listen to the priests. These aren't just words put together. This is sacred magic. Again, people won't like me using the word magic, but it's the miraculous, the true magic. This is the dove, not the serpent. This is sacred magic. It's from the outside, from the futural, that you can interact with. And when you do this, it leads you from the wanderer's world into the future, to the new world, into a loving, real, factical relationship with something on the other side. You see more and more raw certainties of in both experience. It becomes a raw fact of experience that you see in all these different faculties that I've described before. Through this vertical balancing, there's no other way but the 3 oaths. There's no other way but preparation, purification. This is purification. This is the 3 oaths, doing these prayers. This is the balancing. This is going home. This is going back to the ecstasy, is going back to the Garden of Eden. What does initiation mean? The initial point, which is the future, but also the past, the deep past. The initial point, initi, means initiate. It means beginning. And when you go to the beginning, you go to the Garden of Eden. It's a fact that you can experience in these deep meditations and prayers. That's what and this isn't, again, as I keep saying, this is already what the Christians are doing. They don't talk about it in the same way as esotericists now do, Christian esotericists, Christian hermeticists do. This is already what the saints experience. So they just don't have the same words for it. Yeah. Initi, that's what initiation is. But the only way is that purification, illumination, union. The only way is the 3 oaths. Doesn't matter where you are, you have to go through the 3 oaths, which are related to the practices I've talked about before. So a big thank you to all our members, contributors, producers, who you see here in this plaque of honor. Without your financial help, this fellowship wouldn't be possible at all.